They told us we were the future. They also told us we were too dangerous to keep at home. I was 12 when the delegation came. Dressed in shimmering robes that bent light like glass in water, the alien envoys landed in what was left of old Seattle, a flooded, vine-choked city turned refugee hub. Earth had just been accepted into the Galactic Convergence as a probationary species. Translation: we were sent to school like rowdy kids in a quiet classroom. They chose one child from every sector. From Sector 9, they chose me. I didn't cry when I left Earth. There wasn't much left to miss. My foster unit, a cyborg ex-miner and a woman who barely spoke since the orbital blackout, waved with eyes dry and hard. I was tagged, vaccinated, and boarded onto a vessel the size of a small mountain. That was the last time I saw blue skies for a long time. The academy was called Virex Theta, carved into the side of an ice moon, orbiting a gas giant with auroras that danced like spirits. It was alien in every way. Food that moved if you didn't eat fast. Teachers who spoke through scent and light. Gravity that shifted depending on mood stabilizers in the air. You didn't adjust. You endured. And that's where I met him, Teriax. He wasn't in my intake group. In fact, nobody saw where he came from. One day, I was walking the edge of the arboretum, trying to feel something like sunlight, when I saw it. A shape coiled in the shadows of the observation deck. Wings tucked like broken machinery. Scales like molten bronze, dull and pitted with scars. Eyes that didn't blink. They simply looked through you. I thought I was hallucinating. The translators didn't even try to process his presence. He was a myth, sitting still, breathing quietly. I said the only thing a kid from Sector 9 could think to say. Hey. He didn't answer. Not then, but he didn't leave either. In the weeks that followed, I found myself returning, sitting nearby. Sometimes I talked, about home, about the people, the weird food, the fear. Sometimes I just sat. It took a full moon cycle before he spoke back. You are louder than the suns, he growled, but your silence is sharper. We became something. Not friends, not then. He was old, far older than any being I'd ever met. A relic, the last of his kind. They'd called him a diplomatic relic, a being raised and protected by the Convergence after the extinction of his species during the Kreckfold Wars. Dragons, they called them in human tongues, ancient fire breathers, planet breakers. One of them, here, hiding in an academy. You're here to learn too? I asked one day. He chuckled, smoke curling from his nostrils. I am here to remember and to watch. He watched me train. He corrected my posture with a flick of his claw. He called me soft, weak. Then, on the day I stood up to a six-limbed aristocrat who tried to humiliate me in the simulation ring, he said something else. Perhaps you are not a mistake. That was the day I realized I wasn't alone. Others hated me. Humans were new, clumsy, emotional. But Teriax, he was worse. He was a monster with a war in his past and fire in his belly. And somehow, we were the same. They sent us to learn. We were already learning from each other, and someday, the galaxy would learn from us. The Academy didn't teach survival. It assumed you either adapted or vanished. The first thing they taught us was how to kneel, not physically, though some species had kneeling ceremonies before class, but politically. Earth was new, a speck on the edge of mapped space. Most of the other species treated us like toddlers let loose in a weapons lab. The Convergence demanded obedience, patience, restraint, but humans are bad at pretending to be small, especially when we're underestimated. I learned fast. How to speak in 10 languages using only my face. How to stop bleeding with alien dust. How to calculate orbital vectors in a simulation pod that fried your nervous system when you failed. But the hardest lessons weren't taught in class. They happened between tests, in the shadows, in the whispers. Primitive, unstable, accidental species. They said these things like I wasn't there. like I couldn't understand. But I remembered every word. And so did Teriax. He wasn't accepted either. They feared him. Not because of his size, though he could crush a skimmer transport with one swipe, but because of his silence. The old dragon never raised his voice, never fought. He just watched. And in those golden, glowing eyes, they saw the history they wanted buried. He was the last of a race that once turned back a fleet with nothing but wings and wrath. We were outsiders. Together. One day, the instructors ran a team trial, a planetary survival sim. 6 species per squad. 1 week, no help, no weapons, just raw instinct. No one picked me. Teriax volunteered. They objected, claimed he was non-humanoid, unsuitable. But he didn't wait. He simply followed me down to the drop zone, his talons cracking the ship floor with every step. We were dropped into the sulfur storms of Idrin 6, Hell Planet. It rained acid and screamed at night. We didn't just survive, we thrived. I built shelters from volcanic bone trees. Teriax hunted sky worms that bled plasma. He let me ride him once, just once, when a predator tried to ambush us. His back was hot, alive, trembling with ancient power. When we emerged from the trial, ragged, burned, half-starved, we weren't just survivors. We were the only ones who completed the full course. The instructors called it luck. The others called it cheating, but the whispers changed after that. He's not just human. He's his human. Teriax didn't smile often, but that day, he did. I have had riders before, he rumbled, but none who sang to the stars while burning. He meant my reckless dive off a cliff to draw off a creature twice our size. I'd laughed the whole fall. It was the first time I felt free since Earth. Later that night, as we sat beneath the glass dome of the orbital gardens, he told me about his kind. We weren't born of fire, he said. We became it, rage, shaped into wings. He looked at me then, eyes like dying suns. And you are not so different. That night, I stopped being a student. I became his heir. His heir. No war had touched the academy in centuries, but war doesn't need permission. It only needs time. I was 17 when the sky above Virex Theta split in half. It started with a blackout. The orbital grid died in silence. The auroras dimmed. The moon trembled. And then, without warning, the heavens bled fire. Fleet after fleet poured out of fractured space. Sleek, black ships shaped like daggers. They didn't broadcast demands. They didn't identify themselves. They simply opened fire. The first explosion ripped through the asteroid field like a sun flare. Hundreds of lives lost in seconds. Dozens more crushed as the upper spires of the academy collapsed. Most cadets ran. Some screamed. The higher species, the dignified ones, hid behind bureaucracy, waiting for convergence protocol. But protocol doesn't stop plasma. Teriax didn't run. He roared. I'd never heard him raise his voice. Not once. But when the first impact shattered the dormitory wings, he leapt from the observation deck and screamed into the void. A shockwave cracked the entire dome. Windows exploded inward. I ran toward the sound, because I knew where he'd be. The invaders, later called the Drex, weren't just attacking. They were hunting, and they didn't seem interested in diplomacy. They moved in coordinated packs, targeting key knowledge centers, devouring databases, capturing minds. Some suspected they were feeding information into a hive system. Others said they were simply erasing anything that could resist them. The truth didn't matter, because the death toll was growing, and no one was doing a damn thing. So I broke into the weapons vault. Humans weren't authorized for live plasma arms until age 21. But I wasn't a cadet anymore. I was the dragon student, and dragons don't ask permission to fight. I found a relic rifle, too heavy for normal species to carry. But I'd trained under gravity drills. My arms screamed, my hands blistered. But I carried it. Teriax met me in the courtyard, already smoldering. His wings were spread wide, casting shadows longer than the walls. His chest glowed with embers. He looked down at me, not with command, but with pride. Are you ready, little flame? I nodded, and we went to war. We tore through the southern hangars. I took the high corridors, laying down suppressive fire while he carved through Drek's raiders with tooth and claw. Fire met metal. Scales clashed against synth armor. I was reckless. He was beautifully violent. The other students watched from behind shielding domes. Some called us mad. Others whispered a word that would haunt the galaxy for years to come. Dragonborn. Not just a human. Not just a beast. A bond. A fusion of fire and fury. Strategy and instinct. Discipline and defiance. For 3 days, we held the academy. Then reinforcements arrived. Convergence battlecruisers, finally shaken into action, drove the Dreks back into fractured space. Survivors were counted, debriefs initiated, and I, Cal of Sector 9, was summoned before the Convergence High Circle. They wanted to know what I had done. They wanted to know what he had done. They wanted to control it. But you can't tame a dragon, and you sure as hell can't cage the one he raised. The summons came wrapped in silk protocol and poison words. An inquiry, a hearing, a necessary procedure for species safety. But we knew what it was. A trial, not of guilt, but of fear. I sat in a cold chamber beneath the Triad Citadel, the highest seat of Convergence power. Above me, 3 towering holograms flickered, one for each ruling species. The Avixian, with its crystalline feathers and cold logic. The CERN, with gill pouches and 1,000 laws in memory. And the Vactol, neural-linked minds that spoke in unison, always as one. I stood alone. Teriax was barred entry. Too unstable, they said. Too dangerous. And yet I could still feel him outside, pacing like a storm kept behind glass. They began with flattery. You show remarkable initiative for a human. Your academic record is unconventional. Your species' adaptability is noted. Then came the twist. But a dragon, as your companion, unregistered combat action, unauthorized weapons retrieval? They didn't want answers. They wanted obedience. They feared what we represented. A bond born of war, not diplomacy. A myth made real. A dragon and a human, not in chains, but in sync. They questioned my loyalty, my identity, my training, and when I wouldn't yield, they brought in the final strike, my parents. They patched in a hollow feed from Earth. My mother's face flickered through static, tear-streaked, worried. My father, arms crossed, unreadable. Come home, Cal, my mother said. This isn't your fight. But she was wrong. It had always been my fight, because Earth sent me to learn from the galaxy. But the galaxy had just learned something from Earth. We don't fold, we don't kneel, and when you hurt the ones we love, we burn the stars to the ground. I looked up at the Triad and said one word. No. They tried to silence me. Expulsion, sanctions, repatriation. But it was too late. The footage of the Dreks battle had leaked. Thousands had watched it. They'd seen a boy ride fire into enemy lines. They'd seen an ancient dragon defend a world that had once feared him. And now, they wanted to join us. Petitions flooded in, not just from humans, but from species across the rim. Students, warriors, outcasts, those who had always felt like ghosts in the great halls of Convergence. They called themselves the Flamebound, and somehow, without permission, a movement was born. Teriax met me outside the gates after the hearing. You defied them, he said. They gave me no choice, I replied. His wings flared slightly like a sigh made of light. No, you made the only choice worth making. That night we left the academy for good, but not in shame. We flew, yes, flew, on his back through the stratosphere, past blinking satellites and whispering stars. We didn't look back, because something was coming. And this time, we wouldn't wait for it to arrive. We wouldn't wait. Legends don't spread like news. They burn through silence. The name Flamebound was a whisper at first, then a ripple, then a tide. By the time we reached the moon city of Halvaron's Edge, they were already waiting for us. Dozens of beings in scavenged armor, students turned fighters, thinkers turned warriors. They greeted Teriax with awe, but bowed to neither of us. "We're not a cult," one said. "We're a reckoning." We weren't alone anymore. Word of our defiance had sparked more than protest. It had ignited memory. The convergence had ruled for millennia, but their peace came with conditions: submission, order, silence. Entire cultures had been sanitized, folded into protocols. But fire remembers, and our flame wasn't the only one still alive. Teriax revealed the truth. There were others, other dragons, scattered, sleeping, hiding in nebulae or deep within irradiated moons. Their kind had been nearly wiped out during the first binding, an era the convergence labeled prehistory. But they hadn't all died. Some had gone into stasis, others had faded into myth. And now, they were waking up. Teriax and I traveled the Rim for months. From pirate havens to forgotten archives, we traded stories for fuel, fought off mercenary hunters, and followed ancient stellar maps etched into obsidian scales. We weren't chasing glory, we were gathering kindling. On the jungle moon of Aelith Prime, we found a nest of flame-bound Cern, amphibious tacticians who had bonded to a long-dormant drake named Vosk. He was blind in both eyes, but his roar cracked the trees. On the frozen hull of an abandoned mining ship, we met Rin, the smallest dragon yet, barely twice my size, with wings torn from old battles. Her bonded? A six-fingered child who spoke in data streams and wielded a drone swarm like a conductor. The galaxy was shifting, and the convergence knew it. They called us terrorists, traitors, unstable, dangerous. But they never said we were wrong, because somewhere deep in their server vaults and war archives, they knew what the rest of the galaxy was beginning to remember. The dragons had been protectors once, not monsters, not weapons, guardians, and now they were back. I began receiving encoded messages from Earth, secret transmissions from fringe colonies, military defectors, even some within convergence ranks. They spoke of the Drex growing stronger again, of a deeper darkness behind them, something older than war, and through it all, the flame-bound movement kept growing, not just dragons and their chosen, but engineers, smugglers, former diplomats, AI that had broken free from convergence leash code. We weren't building an army, we were rebuilding balance, and I was no longer just Cal of Sector 9. I was the first flame-bound. I didn't want a throne. I didn't want a crown, but I would carry the torch. Because somewhere out there, beyond the old stars, something ancient was stirring, and it knew what we were doing. It feared it, which meant we were on the right path. They came in silence, no declaration, no warnings, just the void blinking and vanishing. The Drex Armada, twice the size of anything Earth's defenses had logged during first contact, descended through the black like falling knives. Convergence fleets scrambled, their pristine ranks breaking like glass. Protocols failed, orders collapsed, and then came the scream. Not of metal, not of engines. The psychic howl of something ancient, laced into the Drex signal. It wasn't just an invasion, it was a ritual. Teriax froze mid-flight above the Saturn rings. I felt his mind stretch, farther than I'd ever felt it, and I knew then he recognized it. "The Devourer is coming," he said. It woke them. The Devourer. The first true predator. A cosmic entity not born of biology or machine. Not Drex. Worse. A force that had consumed stars before dragons had names. A myth so old that dragons had sacrificed half their number to seal it beneath dark matter shrouds. And now, something had dug it up. The final battle wasn't just for territory, it was for memory. We rallied what we could. Flame-bound across systems lit up our encrypted channel. Dragons old and young stirred from their dens. Calcora, the Skybreaker, emerged from Jupiter's storm belt. Voskyle the Shardwing soared from his comet-forged lair. Even the shattered Drake Ashran, wings of starlight, rose from her slumber in the dust ring of Tau Ceti. They weren't gods, but they had remembered how to be brave. Earth sent what it had. A dozen retrofitted plasma carriers, a half-trained orbital division, and a message: we don't run. I stood with Teriax in low orbit as the sky split with Drex carriers. We didn't wait for orders. We launched. The battle was chaos. Stars bled. Hulls cracked. Minds shattered beneath the Devourer's whisper. But we burned. In formation. In unity. I saw a human rider leap from one dragon to another mid-flight, shouting ancient Earth curses. I watched a blind drake shield a fleeing refugee cruiser with its own body, and when the Devourer finally arrived, an abyss given form, a maw that drank light, we were ready. Not with weapons, but with memory. Teriax sang, not a human song, not even a dragon song, a sound made of skyfire and grief, echoing from his soul into mine. And we all joined him. Dragons, riders, AI, rebels, soldiers. We became a single flame. The stars turned gold, and for one moment, the void blinked. The Devourer reeled, and we burned it back, not destroyed, not erased, but sealed once more, because legends don't always win, but they endure. Epilogue: The Flamebound Pact. It's been 20 years. Teriax sleeps now beneath the mountains of Mars, his heart still glowing like embers. I teach at the Flamebound Academy orbiting Earth's third moon. Students from all over, human and otherwise, learn not just history but legacy. The Convergence never truly apologized, but they listened, and that is how change begins. They sent us to learn, we did, but more importantly, we returned to teach.